Welcome to the Path Podcast. It's June 2nd, 2024. My name is Tani, here with Hawk. Good morning, Hawk.
Morning, Donnie. Yeah, it's morning because we're recording in the morning again.
Stoked to be here, despite my body protesting a little bit.
This is earlier than normal early for you. It's right on.
Got up at 5:30 this morning. Yep, a little early for me.
Yeah, it's normal early for me. I think we talked about that though already. Okay.
Get into some news?
For sure.
The trail work for June 22nd at Oaks has been canceled, unfortunately.
Oh.
But keep an eye out for other trail work opportunities. We love people who do trail work at the Path, and we do trail work at the Path.
Yeah. And right now, I think trail work is transitioning to brushing.
Yes.
So need not worry.
You're talking no trails will be sanitized.
No trails
on the
will be
21st?
harmed. No trails will be harmed in this trail work episode.
Yeah, it's funny. It seems like almost any time there's a trail maintenance, someone complains that the trail got sanitized. Right?
I agree.
Yeah. How often do you think that person really thinks that versus is kind of just shred signaling?
Oh, man. I hadn't even really thought about that, but golly, that is probably true.
Because it's kind of like a cool sounding thing to say, right?
It
Like,
is.
I don't know, they sanitized the trail.
Right.
I liked it when it was gnarly.
Right.
I like their old stuff.
Right, exactly. And the more I think about it, especially at a place like the Oaks, there's a wide variety of trails there, but I just don't think like there's a lot of sanitization necessarily going on.
Okay, so sometimes trails develop kind of a cool charm. Like, say there's like a tunnel of foliage that you go through, and that's cool, right?
Right, yeah.
And then sometimes we come through and brush it and open that way up.
Yeah.
And it kind of takes away some of the charm.
Sure. For a time, and then it needs to.
And then before you know it, it's overgrown again, though.
Yeah. So
Right.
it's maintaining the character of that because otherwise it'll get unwritable.
Right.
Some people say that's sanitizing the trail. Yeah.
Yeah. We always cut back when you do trail work. You usually cut back a little bit further.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's going to come back.
Yeah.
The brush always grows back.
Right.
Yeah.
Or
I will say, if you're removing cool features, that's a different story.
that is true.
Especially if they're kind of historically relevant or like known features.
That is definitely sanitizing.
And that happens too.
It does. And sometimes that's unfortunate.
And you can shred signal and like righteously criticize that. I feel like.
That's true. But I have noticed it is time to brush trails.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's coming a little later this year. Is this a little later this year? Like the need to brush the trails is a little bit later?
It's an interesting question. I wonder if it really happens when the sun comes out and everything vegetates out. Right?
Yeah. So
it seems like the mustard is growing like a foot a day right now.
Right. Hand guards. It's been great. So let's see. What else is going on at the shop?
Well, we're recording on Sunday morning. Tuesday will be the last day of business at the Live Oak store.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
I've shed some tears, honestly, and lost a lot of sleep. It's a hard situation. I do feel like it's the right choice with what's going on.
Right.
When I opened that store in, I think it was 2012, there was a lot of optimism.
Yeah.
And along with all that, in the next years came a lot of challenges.
Right.
And closing Live Oak really feels like a defeat in a lot of ways. But you got to be able to take a loss.
Yeah. And that is especially. What were some of the factors in this decision?
Well, the reality is that we may have lost Live Oak anyway because of other factors that I'll get into in a minute, but we were not ready to give up.
Right.
And we were forced to. At the insurance canceled. So our entire, our insurance is a one policy that covers liability for the business, the merchandise in the business for theft, fire, flood, and so forth and so on. Just the things you would want insurance for the building. It's all under one umbrella. We had, it goes up every year. It's expensive.
Right.
But last year we got canceled, and the insurance we had just pulled out of California.
Yeah.
So when we went to shop new insurance, we found out that apparently the fire line, the fire map had been redrawn, and our Tribuco store, no one wanted to insure it for fire, so we had to get the California Fair Plan.
Sure.
But the California, which is expensive, but maybe doable, but the California Fair Plan doesn't cover for theft.
Right.
So it covers the contents for fire, but not theft. So if someone had broken into the path and taken our bikes and customer bikes, it could have been really bad.
Yeah.
And especially the customer bikes, like I'm kind of not comfortable having your bike with me and not having it insured.
Right.
Even though there's sort of a not rational element of like, if I'm coming up with the money, I'm coming up with the money.
Right.
But you know what? If it's my bike, either it's already paid for, or like the vendor's going to understand if I'm a little late on the bill if it got stolen.
Right.
Where if it's your bike, I got to come up with the money like today.
Right.
Like,
Right. Well, and it's not just a replacement. If it's a new bike that's sitting on, it's just a financial thing. But there's an emotional attachment to a customer's bike that they have, and that translates to a trust, rapport with you as a shop.
Right.
And so if that gets stolen,
right,
it is different.
Right. In kind of a complicating factor, the insurance companies seem to want to insure all of our locations or none of them. In other words, they want all of, if they're getting our business, they want all of our business.
Oh, interesting.
And a lot of companies wouldn't insure just the Tustin location.
I see.
And wouldn't insure the Live Oak location. So wouldn't insure us.
Right.
So in other words, the Live Oak, the Tribuco Canyon store was hurting our insurance position for the Tustin stores badly as well.
Right.
So it was really out of hand in that there was really basically no way to insure the Tribuco store to the level of comfort that I wanted. And I think people kind of alluded to some policies that they didn't even show me because they're like, hey, we know you're not going to want to pay an additional $40,000 a year on top of what you're already paying.
Right.
For worse coverage and
Right.
So, and it's been a difficult time in the bike industry, the kind of post-pandemic. We had the pandemic era bike business boom, and then we had the post-pandemic bust, which has been June, I think, marks 2 years.
Oh gosh.
And in fact, the path has not really been operating in a sustainable financial way since June of 2023.
Right.
And so there's that aspect of it as well. I'm happy to say that this last month, May of 2024, we did kind of get back for the first time in, I guess, 23 months to kind of a sustainable business level.
Right.
And all that.
Right. You said June of 23. I think you meant June of 22.
That's true.
Yeah.
Thank you for picking that up.
That's right.
So yeah, it was June of 2022.
Yeah.
I think was the last month that the path operated in the black, so to speak, which
everyone came back to the office, like, things started backing off on the shutdowns and everything like that. And then all of a sudden the market starts.
Well, and the other thing that happened was kind of in April and May of 2022, hundreds of bikes that we had been really hustling to get for 2 years finally all showed up right after no one wanted them anymore.
Right. So that started, like
$1 million and like almost $2 million worth of bikes, like a lot.
Right.
that ultimately had to be sold at a loss.
Right.
The good news is those are all pretty much gone now, and we're kind of operating in a more healthy way again.
Yeah.
But the other factors with the Chibuco store, the neighbor is a feed store, and fortunately for them, their business keeps growing, which means that the hay has taken over. The hay storage situation has taken over the whole parking lot, and it's hurting our ability for customers to park there and do events there. And yeah, and then the other thing is that the landlord out there fired his maintenance guy like 10 years ago and never hired another one.
Oh no. What?
And the deferred maintenance has gotten to the point out there where I think it hurts us as a business.
Right.
And makes us look bad. And we don't need like a gleaming like corporate building.
Right.
But when the building gets to kind of a certain point of disrepair where rotting fashion, rotting wood and not just chipping paint, but no paint left and a huge beehive living there and inside the building and just on and on. So, and leaks. And just a lot of failed repairs of the roof and so forth and so on.
Yeah.
So we were working with the landlord to try to get him to do some maintenance. We were working with the neighbors to try to work on the parking lot. We were working on getting more business out there, and we were going to continue to fight that fight, but the insurance thing killed it.
Right.
Hopefully most of the customers make the trip to Tustin that have been going there. I know a lot of the customers that go to Live Oak, I recognize. I mean, they're old friends, basically people I know from the Tustin store that live out
a little
that
bit
way.
further out, right? Yeah,
and they appreciate the convenience, and we appreciate that community support, and we hope that they can continue to support us with a little longer drive, at least for now. Maybe at some point we'll reopen a shop in South County.
Sure,
I'd love to. I had one kind of friend mention it's a 45-minute drive from my house to the Tustin location, and it's only a 2-minute drive to the Chibuco store. And since we drive between the Tustin store and the Chibuco store a lot,
right,
I could tell you with a lot of confidence that if you take the Canyon, it's pretty much never over 30 minutes.
Got it.
He's hyperbole.
Yeah,
it's 32 minutes probably.
Feels like.
Now, if you take the 5 and there's traffic.
Right.
Because if you take the 5 and there's no traffic, it might be 25 minutes.
Right.
And you might save 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But if you take the 5 in real life, and there's almost always traffic, it could be a lot longer. And you might get road rage too, because there's that particular section. It's funny. I was telling my son the other day, like, I think I'm going to stop driving the 5 when I pick them up from school in South County, because there's this particular section of the 5. For whatever reason, there's like 3 exits in a row. And when there's traffic, everyone gets in, or like there will always be 2 or 3 people in every exit lane passing everyone and cutting back in. And I will sit there and tell myself, like, today, you don't need to get mad. This happens. It happens every day.
I'm not going to let them spoil this. Yeah.
Right. And I'll sit there and I'll have the talk with myself. And then next thing you know, by the time I get home, I'm like mad. I've given someone the thumbs down out my window.
Exactly.
One of the most shameful things I've done is, so there's the exit lane, and then there's the right lane next to the exit lane. And what I'll do is I'll get in the lane next to the exit lane, and I'll wait till someone's trying to cut back into traffic from passing everyone in the exit lane, and I'll put on my right blinker and take the spot they want and cut off the person they're trying to cut off, basically, and give them the thumbs down.
Oh, man. As long as the person behind you knew that was the intent, they're probably giving you the big thumbs up. If you could, there's a way to signal what you were doing. Oh man. Oh yeah, that's terrible, Tani. I would never do something like that.
I actually kind of believe you.
No way. Are you kidding? You've driven me enough. I know the mind is reeling with a.
It's funny. It's funny how you can, because one of my things is
I work really hard at that too, by the way.
Right.
That same thing, and I'm like, I am not going to let these individuals ruin my day,
Right.
or my 30 minutes. And so when I drive with other people, that they may just speaking a little bit hyperbolically when they say that, and they're not actually getting upset, but I actually have a script that I say, and I say that exact thing. Let's not let that individual like ruin our drive.
yeah.
And they might not even be upset, but I'm telling myself as much as I'm asking them.
Yeah.
You know? Reminding them.
Does that person ever then turn on you?
And say like, well, there's always a chuckle in the car because this particular individual has seen me at my absolute worst, and so there's this irony going on in this, right? So it's not lost on either of the people in the car.
One of the things about it is I have a pretty firm belief that if you can predict a future, if an outcome is very, very predictable and it makes you mad, like it makes me question my own intelligence, which bums me out.
But there's a second half to that. If it's predictable, it's also preventable.
Like take another route.
Or mentally prep yourself for that.
Yeah.
Or take action, what you're doing, your mental script, your inner script, or is helping.
I think mainly I've been, because like you, I practice a lot at that.
Right.
And usually pretty successful. And I think I'm kind of like surprised at my inability to succeed in this particular context.
Oh, gosh. Oh, man. And don't get me wrong, I'm not one of those people who really believes that just because you do something, it will change your inner being. It will change you at the core. But I am a believer that your habits and your practices are a first step in that change. Right?
And also, too, another wrinkle is sometimes it's like a cute little old lady, and then I shrivel up
and then you're like and just thumbs down to yourself.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Yeah, oh man. A boo to myself.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah.
It reminds me of another story. Someone keeps putting 22-ounce Budweiser cans, empty ones, in the street in front of my house. Every 3-4 times a week, sometime between 5 o'clock and 5:15 p.m. It's like they get off work and they have a beer and then they throw the can out in my house. And I kind of figured out which car it is and where they live.
So do you go put it on?
And so the other day I'm leaving my house and I see them drive by and I see the can and I follow them.
Oh, man.
And my heart's racing and I'm sitting in my car watching them get out of their car and I'm thinking you're not going to get in a fight. You're just going to ask them to not leave a can in front of your house.
All right. Oh,
I'm telling myself this. I'm thinking I hope they're not too scary looking.
Right. All right.
Mostly because that is harder for me to keep the peace.
Right. Right. Because if it's some little old lady who's throwing their
we're definitely not going to get in a fight.
Yeah. Right.
And the person who gets out is a little old dude.
Oh.
And he's got his mechanic work shirt on.
Yeah.
And he's got his lunchbox.
Right.
And he looks like someone who I would want to show respect to and kindness.
Yeah.
Looks like someone who's had a long day of work.
Sure.
And older than me.
Right.
And kind of.
Yeah.
Just his whole persona. I said a few things about his persona. You can fill in as much as you want with your imagination, but it was someone who elicited a feeling of respect from me.
For sure.
And also of I would feel like a bully approaching them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I just drove away. And I don't know what the moral of the story is.
Yeah. I wonder if they're finishing the beer and throwing it out.
Yeah, that's what I think is happening.
That's bold.
It is.
On so many levels.
Yes.
That's how the dude rolls.
It's how the dude rolls.
I mean, maybe. All right. Pivoting on to other things. Let's see. Over the Hump is back June 11th. This show will actually air by the time, this show will air by then.
No, negative. This show's going to air in 2 days. We're on June 2nd.
Yeah, but if Over the Hump is June 11th.
Yes, my bad. I inverted what you said.
Yep.
I agree with you.
And Dual Slalom is back.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah, but since Jeff Miller is here, I'm not committing to racing Jeff Miller.
I'm really stoked that they're doing that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Bikes and Barbecue, June 9th. Meet here at the 649B location around 8:45, roll around 9.
Yep.
We will ride as a giant group, almost like a critical mass, through the streets of Tustin to Peters Canyon and then up to Santiago Oaks. Well, we'll break up into smaller groups and do self-guided group rides through Oaks and then meet back at this location at 649B for barbecue and refreshments.
Fantastic.
Supported by Smoked in 1886 Brewery.
Nice. Has it been determined if you're going to e-bike or pedal bike?
Well, I crashed on our last ride.
You did crash.
So it hasn't been determined for sure if I'm going. I tweaked my pinky finger on my left hand pretty badly, and it's hard for me to grip the bars.
Oh,
and
man.
The vibration kind of hurts, but it seems like it's healing quickly. I think I dislocated and relocated in the span of the crash, maybe.
Yeah.
And it's feeling better every day, so maybe.
Right.
Probably e-bike if I go because I need to get back to the shop early to light up the barbecue.
Yeah. So maybe we table that because we're still on shop news, but I do want to kind of walk through that experience a little bit.
Man, I walked through it in a really vivid dream as I fell asleep the other night.
Oh, right.
And you know that thing where you're like falling and you, as you're falling asleep, you maybe do or don't have a dream about falling and then jerk awake.
Yeah,
that happened to me with that crash as the event.
Oh my gosh. Well, let's take a brief tangent here, like we do a lot of times. So, like we've been riding regularly, and it's been pretty dang fantastic, and the trails are running super well. And we were moving out on this one particular trail, and high speed straight into a left steep kind of waterfall.
Some people probably know the trail. It's like there's like a fast you come off top of the world and there's like a fast section, and then some people call it a sandbag jump and then a waterfall. I let Zach go in front of me because I didn't feel like hitting the sandbag jump, and sometimes you can have like a weird interference if the front person doesn't hit it and the person right behind them does.
Right.
And then there's that waterfall section right after that, below the like VW Rock thing. Yeah. Above the VW Rock thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've ridden there over the years quite a bit on downhill bikes and full faces and stuff. So it's difficult for me to not view that section of trail through the lens of like a full face and goggles and stuff.
Right.
Even though we weren't in that situation. And like knee pad.
Knee
I wasn't
pads.
wearing any knee pads. Like
I know.
No, nothing. Right.
Yeah.
I don't even think I had my sunglasses on, like, because it was sunset.
Right.
Half shell, and it's kind of flat. There's kind of like a flat, hard left, and then a steep kind of waterfall section. And I like to unweight out of that left turn and kind of gap in and smooth out the top part of that waterfall section, and really it gives you a kind of a gnarly acceleration to where like it gets difficult a little bit to control the speed later, but it's rad. As I was setting up that left, my front wheel started to slide out a little bit, and then it caught and my rear wheel stepped way out. And I ended up kind of tangled up in the bike entering the waterfall.
Scary because you could have kept on going way down the waterfall.
The rear wheel stepped out so bad that I managed to get left of the trail into the bushes. It kind of really saved me from a lot of damage.
Instead of pitching 90 degrees like straight and then pitching 90 degrees down, you probably pitched like not 180 degrees, but more like 135 degrees.
Right.
So you're coming back into the bushes.
Right. But it's also why I crashed.
Exactly. Exactly. So,
First time running the Conti Grip Total tire. I don't really blame that tire, although I think It was one of several unfamiliar things on the bike that kind of contributed to the situation.
Sure. I mean, it was a first time on
I
that
did
bike
like
as
the
well,
tire.
yeah.
First time on the bike, flew the Range VLT.
Yeah.
Really impressive bike for what it is.
Yep.
And really kind of inspires one to push it through that high speed chunky stuff
yeah,
too. So
for sure.
like kind of
Yeah.
eggs you on through there.
Yeah. High pivot.
High pivot with an idler is
an idler.
super well behaved.
Yeah.
We'd probably talk a little more about ride impressions on that bike in a minute. The crash was really violent. I have a lot of like heavy, deep bruising. And for a second, I wasn't totally sure I didn't break my femur, and it knocked the wind out of me.
Yeah.
And so I was sitting there assessing many little hurt spots, and like, are you asking myself what my wrestling coach used to ask me, like, are you hurt or are you injured?
Oh gosh, I know. Well, you know, it's one of those things. So, the other Eric and I were right behind you, and you know, kind of in this 4-person train, and man, I was the last person, and so the other Eric, had a better view of this, but I saw it, and I like immediately jumped off my bike and ran down the hill, and you were like, we all do, we all sort of start to stand up, right? And I was like, I almost told you just like
Not yet.
lay with your face down for a moment and do your assessment,
Yeah.
because that was even being the second person behind, it was
Turned out I got pretty lucky. I think I mostly hurt and not injured,
right.
so to speak. But the violence was rattling. It was a violent crash. And it's funny, you know, the crash that I got hurt the worst wasn't real violent.
Right.
I did the bimalleolar fracture in my ankle that has changed my life forever, and I'll never run again and everything. And that crash seemed fairly slide outy mellow.
Yeah.
Till I realized what had happened. And this crash, no major injuries, but it was violent. Like it was like a Quentin Tarantino movie violent.
Exactly. Oh gosh.
So
Yeah, that was so I'm super glad. Man, I don't even think you need a new helmet after that crash. Is what's
I didn't really hit my head. I hit my thigh really, really hard.
Yeah.
And I've got some bruises and scrapes on up and down my left side, but
yeah. After we were talking, you know, one of the comments was, you're like, man, I just feel like inner rattled. And it was like one of those full body like crashes that rattles all your organs. And so it's one of those, I think we've had some of those, and you just feel like all your organs feel unsettled.
You know, too, that sense of like, oh no, like this, like you ever, as you're crashing, kind of have the like, my life might be changing forever right now feeling. And it's like really heavy, and like it's not even scary or sad, it's so real.
Right.
Like it's just like, whoa, like
and
it felt like that.
Yeah, and it's one of those things like there's I've always said this, riders of a certain skill level, you get above this speed, and there's this tipping point where you cross over into speed where crashes really have that effect, potential for that effect. You know, all crashes have the potential to be bad, but I think there's something that when you cross into the certain speed where the probability is greater when you're going at that level speed.
Yeah.
Because for myself, even though people say, "Oh, you know, you're pretty fast down," I rarely cross into that space. You know, and I think like I watch, you know, shuttled with certain groups from the shop in the past, what have you, and I'm like, that's that speed where I think people cross into.
I don't know if it's as much as, well, speed's a factor and it can cause more injury in a crash for sure, but also it's a commitment level, I think, which goes with speed.
Yeah.
And I do think too, the bike I was riding requires a really high commitment level.
Yeah.
And I think that was part of it.
Right.
As in, so my relay requires a pretty high commitment level.
Yeah.
Long wheelbase, big travel. You got to commit to it to turn. You got to commit to it to pick the front wheel up. But it's like 10, 15 pounds lighter than the bike.
Right.
The weight adds to the commitment level.
It does. Yeah. Okay.
Because like I can barely pick the front wheel up. I can't flick it around and move it.
That's
and
an
like
interesting
make quick adjustments.
Yeah.
And also,
so to get it to do that same move that you've done requires fuller commitment.
that's true.
Yeah.
And the same thing that makes the bike safer would be like having a long wheelbase and more travel also can backfire.
Yeah, because
Like you can get deeper in that travel and the geo can get wonky
Right.
and stuff like that. So, or you can get kind of like launched by the travel. A little bit if you're,
or and being more fully committed when things go wrong, it's harder to have a moderate level crash, if you could still call it that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing, you know, we've been riding a lot lately, and knock on wood, like there haven't been a lot of crashes from any of us.
Right.
And it'd been a while since I crashed. Sometimes they come in threes. I'm going to try to not have this be the first time.
Maybe I should start leading some of these. So,
Yeah.
like not as kind of.
Zach was saying maybe I shouldn't follow him anymore because another time I followed him, I crashed too. And I pointed out that both times, if we're looking for a pattern, both times I was on unfamiliar equipment. And it's not him.
It's not him. I will say this. I will say this. I feel like we've ridden that we've ridden that section of trail many times since we've been kind of on a more regular riding basis. I do feel like that particular instant, we had ticked it up on the speed and commitment to that.
Maybe a little. I feel like I've ridden that trail at that pace in the last at times.
Oh,
lately.
I see.
Like
Yeah.
like on some of the Wednesday rides.
Right.
That section of trail.
Sure.
Or close around that pace.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that every Wednesday we've been picking up the pace a little bit, maybe, as just from getting the reps, right? And riding with
Yeah,
it.
for sure. And it's all, to me, it feels, I can feel it, but it also feels within like what the bikes and just getting the reps in is it's comfortable, but you can sort of feel it stepping up a little bit. And one of the things that I've been fixating this on since you mentioned heel position.
Oh yeah.
I've been fixating on that as well. And when do you like heels down or when do you heels up? What I started realizing too is I was like, oh yeah, man, that pushing I was like, it's like pushing the gas pedal to accelerate around curves, you know? And so for me, what I was thinking the other day is that kind of outside foot it's almost like feeling that sensation of pushing on the gas pedal rather than like taking your like heel down on cornering, and pushing the gas pedal really is accelerating through the corner. And it's not even, what I started realizing is I've been glancing down at my feet when I'm doing this, which is maybe not the most, I'm like, is my heel really up? But it's not really. It's almost just like a flat pedaling with a pressure pushing your heel forward. It's definitely not heel down, you know, but
It might be up a few millimeters.
yeah, up a few millimeters. But just,
which is a huge difference in your ankle and your weight distribution.
Yes. Allowing you to break the plane and where that bike is and how you're weighting the front wheel.
It also allows you to absorb some little bumps through the turn.
Yeah.
A little bit with your ankles.
Yeah. So,
but I think the main thing is that it lightens up the rear wheel to drift around a little bit.
right.
And weights the front wheel to get traction.
Yeah. Oh yeah, completely. Yeah, it was it's been really great. And we can get into some more thoughts. Let's keep on the news. I saw something, is the shop doing a demo day at Irvine Regional Park?
Yep. We got a permit. We're doing a demo day at Irvine Regional. The date, it's on June 23rd. we'll be taking reservations. We're still getting ready to start taking reservations. Maybe by the time this shows up, it'll be ready.
What are just some of the initial thoughts on brands and bikes that are going to be out there?
We're bringing our demo fleet. You can check it out on our web store.
Fantastic.
But yeah, there's a bunch of bikes, muscle bikes and e-bikes.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's great. Looking forward to that. Handlebars. Ooh, I have some handlebar thoughts.
Yeah?
Yeah. But so man, we're going to jump into this a little bit, I think, but I don't know, did we talk about me getting a fluid VLT?
I don't think so.
Oh, yeah. Oh, there's so much to talk about on
Let's
that.
talk about that, because you got that bike. It's a pretty short travel bike.
Yep. 140, 150.
I think it's the shortest travel bike a lot of times on these Wednesday rides we're doing.
It is.
A lot of people are on relays, PNWs, which are 170, 170.
Yep.
And some people are like Eric's got his Rise, which I think is 150, 160, or even
It's
160,
160. Yep. Yep.
So yeah, sometimes I've ridden the Heckler SL, which is 150, 160.
Yep. Yep.
So shortest travel bike on the ride.
It might even be the steepest angle bike on the ride.
Head angle is 64 and a half.
64 and a half.
I think that's the same as the Heckler SL, maybe.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Maybe.
Right.
I would say that bike has you riding that bike has coincided with your riding kind of seeming more confident and fast.
Yeah.
Especially in the NAR, which is especially counterintuitive.
Right.
Like especially in the big steep stuff.
Yeah. Shorter travel, steeper head angle.
Like 2 Wednesdays ago, when you're on a group ride, everyone kind of like urges each other to go in front of them for the most part,
right,
to a degree, and no one really wants to be getting pushed from the back by someone or slowing someone down.
Right.
Almost more than people. There's a slight counter pressure to everyone wants to be the fastest and everyone wants to not get dust in their face.
Right.
And no one wants to be stuck behind someone slower than them.
Right.
So that's the counter pressure. But I feel like in our group, generally the overall pressure is more like no one wants to be the one slowing someone down.
Yeah.
And no one wants to, mainly that.
Yeah.
Like no one wants to be the one holding someone else up.
Yeah.
And so, it kind of people decide how fast they want to go and they watch how fast everyone else is going and they tend to wave people in front of them who are going faster than they want to go.
Right, exactly. And it could change, right?
It could change.
It's how you're feeling for the night, yeah.
And so I had noticed that at the beginning of the ride, you were waving everyone else ahead of you.
Right.
And then I noticed that on a steeper section on the second trail, one rider kind of waved you past them, like you go.
Right.
And then they just kept waving you past, like you were now just in front of them on the road, on the downhills.
Right.
And that was and I was like, oh, on the short travel bike, it kind of in the back of my head, right?
Right.
New bike.
Right.
Like,
oh, that's kind of interesting, right?
Right. And that person, they're pretty competitive person. Like they try not to wave people past them, I feel.
Gosh, right. Okay.
And so I don't know, noted, and then a little later in the ride, we get to that surfer trail and there's that steep rock rolling at the top of it.
Right.
And I noticed someone.
Because you went ahead and then you kind of got through it
back,
and then you stopped and looked back.
And I saw everyone at the top and I noticed everyone waved you ahead and all of a sudden it was you and I up front in the ride. And
right.
That trail was super fun. I hadn't ridden that trail in a while.
Oh my gosh.
That was cool. That was old times.
Yeah. And right below that big kind of roller waterfall, right below there, I feel like is the most tricky section of trail, and it doesn't even look like it.
Well, especially for short travel, because it's off camber and rowdy and chunky.
Yeah.
And you kind of want to go fast through it because we've done it on downhill bikes. So
right. Exactly.
It's kind of like totally DH radness.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that bike was performing awesome for you down there.
Yeah, and we were trying to. We've had conversations about what about that bike. I mean, in addition to reps and then what have you, but what about that bike is different? And your thought on the pivot Your switchblade, how the reach is 465.
I think it's 468
468
in low.
in low, right? And this one is 470.
Yeah.
So the reach is really long, and it's the longest that I've ever ridden.
By probably 10
By
millimeters.
probably 10 millimeters.
And I think for riders that don't know, 10 millimeters of reach is almost or roughly half a bike size. Like it's significant.
Right. Yeah. So I started with the 35 mil stem. I was on a 45 mil stem now. But it really, and we've talked about this, that longer reach, I think kind of thinking puts you a little bit more forward, helps you to weight I shouldn't say forward, maybe, but in the balanced position on bikes for handling.
It puts the front wheel further ahead of the bottom bracket,
Right.
which I think makes some space for the rider to be more centered on the bike without being too far over the front wheel.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think that has a lot to do with this particular bike and how it's performing. And it's very confidence inspiring, which makes me think about, what about your switchblade? You've kind of talked about this.
It's interesting because, we've been talking about reaches getting longer. We've been doing this show like 10 years or so.
Right.
And we've been talking about the long reach revolution the whole time.
Right, exactly.
And really, we were early participants in the long reach revolution with the custom Ventanas that we were riding.
Yep.
Which were super long reach for their time,
Right.
and super short reach for now.
Yeah.
Back then, the main way we talked about anything relevant to reach was top tube length.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think back then your typical medium had an effective top tube length of about 22 and a half inches, and we were doing 24 inches on a medium.
Exactly.
And I don't know what the reach numbers were, but I bet they were 430 or something.
Yeah. Probably.
And then the process bikes came out, and those were revolutionary for for a few things.
The Gen 1 for process 153s. Yeah.
And 111s.
And 111s, right.
And I think there were a few revolutionary things about those bikes, including there were some of the first bikes that weren't designed for a front derailleur to be mounted on them.
Exactly. Yeah.
But the other revolutionary thing about those bikes is that they had like pretty much the longest reaches of any production bike to date.
Yeah. 435 on the medium.
And so that was really long, right?
Exactly.
And then through the course of, I think that was 2011 or something.
Yeah.
And then through 2015, 2016, we started to get even longer than that. I think we were both riding bikes probably 440,
right.
445,
yeah.
And then more recently 450, 455.
Yep.
I don't think I've had a bike over 455 before my Switchblade, maybe, or 468, 458 or something.
Yeah, same.
I definitely haven't had a bike in the 460s before.
Correct, same.
So I got the Switchblade and immediately was like, whoa, I really like almost 470.
Yeah,
like or around 470.
Yeah, we've talked about that, and this is now 470.
Yeah.
And it is, I continue to be impressed with the capability of the 140 travel rear 140 150, or in the past week I've got it set up as 160 on the front, and that's going fantastic as well.
Yeah. A couple other things about that bike. Let's picture me in my crash on that bike. As the front wheel loads up and starts to lose traction on that bike, a lot less travel changes going on.
Right.
The bottom bracket height is staying more consistent. The head angle is staying more consistent because there's not as much travel to go through and change the geo.
Right.
And then as the front wheel starts to come out and the fork extends, again, there's less disruption.
Correct. And in that particular instance, you say you are unweighting and then into. So this is
all happening during the weight to the unweight.
Correct. And so that front wheel weighting is what's getting loaded up first. And
then as the front wheel unweights and the rear wheel loads up,
it's
now that
compression,
right?
Yeah,
exactly. The rocking horse is exaggerated.
Right.
And then as the wheel breaks free and the suspension pops out, the kind of loss of traction can be exaggerated too, because that rear tire is like shooting out from the way loaded up suspension.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's a way in which that less travel is more stable.
Right.
And at normal sag or unsagged, you are low to the ground on that bike compared to a bike with more travel. I think that's a thing too.
Right. Right. So there's all of that going into kind of that cornering phenomenon.
And just anything like being low is confidence inspiring.
Yep.
Having a bike that doesn't change a lot is confidence inspiring.
Right.
So a lot of travel can be confidence inspiring in a different way.
Right.
Everything has trade-offs, right?
But, yeah, for sure. And that's one of the things I did do, and this, kind of jump around on the bike and the experience with it, is I replaced the alloy bars with the one-up bars. They're kind of shaped and what have you to absorb.
Yeah.
That's kind of their, and they really do work.
Oh yeah.
They really do work. And I had a chance to ride a couple rides on the alloy bars at 800 mils wide. And then I got on the one-ups. I cut them down to, I've been riding 160, but I actually cut these down to 155.
Wait a second.
I'm sorry, 760 down to 755.
Gotcha.
Thank you. But man, that also having that absorption on the bars makes, from a short travel perspective, I think is super helpful. Maybe even more noticeable on a short travel bike.
Yeah, I could see that.
So that is helping out as well. The part spec on it's a C2, so it's the range VLT. They have the different C1, C2. I don't know if they have a C3.
They do.
Okay, so this is kind of that mid-level spec bike, and so it's got it's down spec'd, of course. It's got instead of the code stealth brakes, it's got TRP Evos, which is the first time I've been on them. We can talk a whole bunch about that as well. Instead of the Fox Elite fork, it's got the or Fox. Yeah, I don't know if it's Elite or if it's a factory. On the C1, it's got a Lyric Select Plus, which we can talk a lot about. That's an awesome fork. And then GX versus XO transmission, and then a different seat post.
So on the bars, I think OneUp changed the industry. OneUp is an industry leader.
Right.
OneUp is doing things that everyone else is copying.
Yeah.
So we sell almost only OneUp bars for the last few years.
Right.
Because they are more comfortable and they do make a difference. And now and I think 5-10 years ago, most people who were talking about handlebar qualities, the main kind of attribute that people wanted was stiffness.
Right.
And then OneUp introduced this idea that we want some controlled flex and some vibration absorption in our bars, and now everyone's doing it.
Right.
So the new race face bars have that.
Santa Cruz bars have that.
I think Pivot's been talking about it as long as anyone, but I'm leaving my Pivot bars on because they do seem to absorb vibration well. They do it with carbon layup as opposed to with external taper.
Oh, got it. Oh, I like that.
Internal
I like that idea.
So yeah, wall thickness and layup more than shape.
Right.
But the bars on the switchblade are really smooth riding also.
Right.
On the brakes, I gotta think. I love the TRP brakes. Are you loving the TRP?
Yeah.
I think they're better than codes.
Yeah. Oh, I think so.
Zach doesn't think so. It's all right.
Yeah.
Brakes are fun. Brakes are one of those personal things.
Oh my gosh, it's almost like seat shape, saddle shape.
Yeah.
And he calls it, we were on the ride, he's like, they're like old man brakes.
Is that what Zach said?
Yeah.
That's funny.
I was like, I love old man brakes. I am an old man.
I kind of wonder what he means by that, because the way I would think about it is, I guess I don't know what he means by that.
Yeah. I don't know if he maybe meant I'm not sure, because the way that I would show, we'll have to ask him.
The way I would describe TRPs compared to codes is that there is more power throughout the power curve, but not so much that it's grabby like a Shimano.
Yeah, see it. I was kind of explaining it similarly. because I have Saints on I think on the relay, and I moved from codes to Saints, and I was like, oh, I love this, more power and that grabby, like the grabby Saint feel. But when I got on the TRPs, I'm like, oh yeah, it sort of has that same power feel that the Saints do, but it's not as grabby.
And on the code, by the bottom of a lot of the descents we've been doing, I feel like I have to pull the levers pretty hard to be slowing down. And I never feel like I have to pull the levers real hard on the TRPs.
Right.
Where on the other end of the spectrum, on Shimano's, I feel like I never have to pull the levers hard, but sometimes they're too grabby.
Too on off. Yeah. I don't know if that's the same thing.
I think it is a little bit that they have less usable range of modulation.
Right.
And it's also that it starts at so much light. It's like too light of a pressure, starts too much power for me.
Right. Yeah, with that said, I do like the Saints, and I'm really, really liking the TRPs. But what's really interesting about this little like run through the part spec, and then one last thing, difference between the C2 and the C1, and I think this might be one of the bigger differences from a price point is the wheels. So they down spec the wheels, and I was thinking about this and talking with I forget who on one of the Wednesday rides. They're saying, is it maybe they did that on purpose on the C2? You know, like the C2 has got a really well thought out part spec, GX transmission. Like, I'm like, do I really need EXO? And there's a lot of different, we could get into the differences between those, but it's definitely less expensive. It comes with an X2 shock, so both of the bikes come with the X2 shock, which is great. The Lyric fork is phenomenal. So I mean, like, yeah, okay, the Fox Factory or Elite that comes on the C1 might be a little more expensive, might have a little better damping characteristics, but the Lyric's a fantastic fork. But the wheels, it's interesting, and the first thing I did is I'm going to strip the wheels off and move an old wheel set on. I wonder if a lot of people buying these types of bikes have wheels already, and so
I think so.
Norco's like, you know what? Just put a serviceable wheel set on there, save as much as we can, because people are going to strip them off anyways.
I think in general, you see that with smart bike specs that are trying to not just be the most expensive bike, because expensive wheels are a pretty personal choice, and you might want the ones you want.
Right. Yeah, so that's a really interesting thought. So if you're looking at that VLT, the new the fluid VLT, take a look at the different part specs or different models and see which one really kind of fits your.
I think the C2 is a really smart spec, and I think it's a really cool bike. How do you like that motor?
Oh yeah, that's a whole different thing too. I really like the Flow app, the Bosch Flow app. I'm kidding. Like,
no,
it's going to sound like I'm not even kidding. It's true. Yeah. I'm going to sound like a commercial for the Flow app,
Yeah.
But this is actually the first app that I've used. So I shouldn't say like, oh, it's the greatest thing, because I never have used other ones. And so the ability to change within each of the assist levels, the ability to change both how much assist comes on sooner, and then the quote acceleration. So I'm still working through what these exactly mean, but like the assist level, I think has to do with if you're not in the optimal RPMs, like cadence, how quickly it's going to get you to full assist. So but it also definitely burns through more of your battery if you kind of just max out the assist level.
Oh yeah,
yeah, it's fantastic. So to have all of that, but it does burn through the range. And our Wednesday night rides, we've been draining the entire battery, and that's not we don't full boost the whole time. So there's range management going on.
Some Wednesdays I have full boosted the whole time. When we go up the other side of the highway, I don't.
Right.
So if it's like 3,900 feet of climbing, I can
almost
full boost the whole time.
Yeah.
Which sometimes that's what we're doing.
Right. And so the Flow app is awesome in that way to adjust the different assist levels. And I think it also has this. I have to play with it, but it has a ability to kill the motor. So like if you walk away from your bike, you could kill the motor.
Oh, a security
There's a
feature.
security feature,
Right.
which is really, I think that's interesting.
There's also a tracking app you can subscribe to.
Yeah, exactly. So first whatever month is free.
I think it's a year.
It's a year. So that's pretty awesome. But the motor itself, it's quiet. I don't know if it's as quiet as the Fazua.
I think they're
Pretty
comparable.
comparable. It's not a thing where you're like, oh my gosh, this thing is so loud. But yeah, so that's good. I do like the EMTB it's a hard thing to pass up, and I really like how Bosch has that part of it,
which is kind of like it controls the power level based on what it's kind of like an automatic power level adjustment.
Right, exactly. And so that's good. It's interesting. I don't exactly know how it works itself out, but it says it has the higher peak wattage than others.
Yep.
And I feel when you're in full boost mode that I think it almost feels full powered.
Mm-hmm. I think especially if it's not a real steep hill.
Yeah.
I think the steeper the hill is, the more that torque comes into play, and it's still just 50 Newton meters of torque.
Right. Or 60, yeah.
It's 60. Is it 60?
I think it's 60.
60.
But, yeah, because I was trying to figure out like time differences between what I remember a full power e-bike is versus the reduced power, or maybe it's 55 Newton meters. Maybe it's half in between.
It is 55 Newton meters.
Okay, so it's halfway in between, because I think the Fazua is 60.
Yes.
It's interesting because I almost feel like full boost on the Bosch SX is like the Fazua with that 12-second super boost.
Okay.
Which is an interesting difference.
I wonder if I noticed the torque more than you because I'm heavier than you.
Oh, interesting. Maybe. Yeah, so I really like the Bosch motor is super impressive.
Yeah, and probably really reliable, even though we haven't sold a bunch of the SX yet.
Right. I can't believe that you guys haven't sold more of those fluid VLTs.
I am surprised as well. I would think that would be a really hot bike.
Do you think it's because the 140 feels like maybe too short travel for people? Especially,
I think it's a lot of things. I think that Norco doesn't have the strongest marketing machine.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the Ride Fantasy. So this bike is targeted at people who want kind of a really light, short travel e-bike. And I think that Ride Fantasy hasn't really. I think a lot of people who have that Ride Fantasy are kind of a little bit weary of mixed wheels.
Mm.
They tend to be more like XC background 29er, where this bike is meant for that rider, but it's also meant. And I think the other rider who that bike would appeal to, like the person who would say if they were buying a muscle bike, might get like a 5010 or some sort of or a Score 2030 or like a shreddy short travel bike or for that matter a Norco Optic.
Right.
Which I think is the closest equivalent to what you have probably is a Norco Optic.
Yeah.
You had a Norco Optic.
I did.
And I think that a lot of the riders who share that really playful, thready mindset, they're some of the e-bike holdouts too.
Yeah.
And I also still think just in general, the Ride Fantasy with the SL e-bike isn't real fleshed out. And it takes kind of, you either have to know someone who's living it already, or you have to have like kind of a good imagination to really, and like, I think I have a pretty good Ride Fantasy imagination. Like I built my business around it. Right. Like,
yeah.
But each new shreddy short travel lightweight e-bike I ride has little revelations for me in the ride in what that Ride Fantasy can be and what it can be like. So I think that as as a community of riders, we're still learning about what these bikes are and what they can mean. And I think that, for example, when I was riding a very, very capable, shreddy, big e-bike this last Wednesday, and it did very little. There was very little time on the downhill where I felt like it was an advantage. It was almost always a disadvantage. But it went uphill faster.
Right. The full power.
Yeah,
definitely.
Also, I played around with that. I put it on full power and like tried to see how far ahead of you guys I could get on that one switchbacky trail.
Right.
And, you know, I got like 45 seconds ahead of you over like 5-10 minutes.
Right.
It wasn't even really enough time to catch my breath.
Right.
And I guess the point being, for me, that bike, it's got all these like big enduro qualities, but in a way, all I see is like a fast climbing like it climbs good. Like that's what it does better is it climbs good.
Right.
So what are we doing? Right. Like what's the ride fantasy? Like,
right.
Not that it doesn't rip downhill. It absolutely rips downhill. And I will give it the nod that compared to my relay in the high speed chunk, it's more planted.
Yeah.
And I think that's largely that high pivot suspension. It's insane.
Yeah, that idler. Yeah.
It is insane.
Yeah.
But, and just there's heavier is more planted too.
Yeah.
So going mostly straight at really high speeds over rough stuff, yes, it is more confidence inspiring.
Right.
Overall, not by much, not enough, I don't think, to be like faster on the trail overall.
Right.
And it doesn't corner as well. If I oversteer or understeer in the corner, it's comparatively like impossible to correct.
Yeah, sure.
If I a little slightly understeer or slightly oversteer into a corner on the relay, the correction's easy.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's I think that maybe it's the new bike phenomenon speaking, but I think that what Norco has done with the fluid VLT, it's not all bikes that come out push the industry forward.
I guess part of what I'm saying is I think a lot of riders would see the fluid VLT and the range VLT, and they would think that the way to be fast and look fast and act fast on the downhill is to ride the range. But depending on the trail and depending on the rider, maybe not. And also too, if you want to hit some jumps,
right
now the fluid jump's awesome.
Yeah, it does.
And the range kind of just thinks all jumps are bumps that it needs to absorb.
Jumps are bumps. It's
got to be a big jump.
Yeah. And that's where I think that the fluid is going to be one of these bikes that pushes the industry forward, is because, riding it on these Wednesday night rides, I'm like, man, this is really capable, and it makes me want to even ride some of the even more techie trails, and I want to see, like, I'm pretty sure this is going to do well on that type of trail.
You remember in the early days of free ride and downhill progression when like the Monster T and the Super T were like super heavy.
Right.
And in general, there were like aspects of the equipment that was kind of overbuilt and over burly past. And there were tons of riders kind of shred signaling by getting kind of the heaviest bike.
Right.
And the heaviest wheels and the heaviest tires.
Right.
But the styliest riders and the fastest riders, they were still not always doing that.
Right.
Like you try to draw too broad of a brushstroke and you're going to get crossed up. And I might have just done that. But in general, there was at times kind of a kookiness to the like extreme end of the free ride scene, right? And it helped build the sport. It helped,
for sure. There's
aspects of it where we're still catching back up to that with like brake size and tire toughness and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but and I do feel though that in those days of free ride, there were some examples of like, well, yeah, a 50-pound bike is more stable. A 50-pound muscle
Right,
bike,
exactly.
Right?
And there are those.
100%.
Were those, yeah.
A lot of them.
Yeah,
that was kind of the
sure.
standard weight for like a downhill.
Oh my gosh, there do, yeah.
And I think that as the ride fantasy progressed, it's like, no, downhill bikes need to be probably more like 40 pounds or even less sometimes, or 42.
Which they are, you know.
And it stopped being kind of like the park rat shred signaling kid stopped having a 50-pound bike.
Yeah.
And I think we might be sort of in that phase with e-bikes a little bit, where it's just like bigger, better, more, bigger, better. And
certain companies are willing to take a flyer chance and maybe really think about what are the good aspects of creating a more capable downhill bike with maybe lighter and not as much and not as extreme. And I feel like not everyone has done that. I think the Giant with the Trans Advanced Elite has done that, because that's full powered, but it's an SL, like low 40-pound bike.
Yep.
I feel like with the geometry of the fluid and the Bosch SX motor, and the geometry with the super long reach is really pushing that forward too. With a higher, like that Bosch motor with a higher peak output is really doing that.
Yes, and then now the Rise is full power also.
Right.
The new
so
Rise is 85
I was looking at
also.
that one, and so man, it's a great time to be riding. I'm sure we'll talk more in future episodes on our different bikes that we're riding and the advantages.
Remember when? Couple things, just back to reach.
Yep.
When reach on a medium was about 450, I believe we had and there was like a Grim Donut bike.
Right.
I believe we had a conversation maybe 7 years ago or so about, are we done? Like, is reach, are we there yet?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh gosh, at 450. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
and so I think we kind of, before the show, we're wondering the same thing still.
70.
Are we done? Are we done?
Are we done? Yeah.
Are we done here?
Oh man.
Are we? At what point do reaches get too long and start going back the other way? And we were having the same conversation about head angles too.
Yeah.
And I don't know that either one is all the way done.
Yeah, and again, the Norco fluid. I could take this bike to a 62-degree head angle with the 470 reach, with the 2-degree angle adjust, and running a 160 fork.
I think it's really interesting how it's going to play out for really tall riders, or even just taller riders.
Right.
Like Jeff, who's been on the podcast, he likes a reach of about 485. With these type of geo, he's a tweener. Because it's 470 to 495.
Right.
Is like one size is 470, the next size is 495, and he wants 485. And I wonder if 485 for him is like 460 for us, and he just hasn't made the leap yet, or if it just scales out differently.
Right.
We don't know. It's different for different riders and all that. And then you take that all the way to a double extra large. If you typically, the difference between a size is roughly 25 millimeters of reach. Right. So if a double extra large, large with our current scale,
like now it's
495 for a large, 520 for an extra large, and 545 for a double extra large. Like that's insane for a double extra large, right? Like,
right.
So is that just what they need, and we just don't know it yet as an industry? I don't know. Right.
It's like cranks.
It's like short cranks.
Are we done yet?
With short cranks? I think we're just getting started with short cranks.
Exactly. No, I was going to say. Are we done yet with the podcast?
Oh,
is that a podcast, man?
We haven't even barely scratched the surface of our topics.
I know. But oh gosh. Okay. Well, we're still on the Bosch motors. I think I've gotten 4,200 feet of gain on this. maybe a little bit more. I heard recently that someone on the Fazua motor on the relay, Tyler, who was on the show, he's done a couple Harding Joplin laps. Not 2 laps on one charge, but
Yes. He's done it twice.
He's done it twice with different settings on the Fazua and on one battery. So that's pretty impressive.
When he turned down the support level for the eco mode, and he is using the eco mode,
Yeah.
not the middle mode.
Right.
He said he finished the ride with 2 bars left.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah.
But the eco mode, again, the Fazua only has 3 modes. So eco, middle, boost.
Right.
And so I don't know where that fits in on a 5 mode bike like the Bosch. So we'd have to check that out. But I've always thought that range extenders would be a great thing. So when are range extenders coming?
I'm told that the range extender for the Bosch Smart Systems, which includes your motor,
Fantastic,
are coming in July.
Awesome.
And that the Fazua range extender is coming in November.
That's got a month
Nope.
away.
This is what I'm told.
Yeah. But that would be, man, especially on these, 60 Newton meter motors. Gosh, that could, you could put in some big days.
Yeah. Before we go, I want to mention a couple quick things.
Yeah, for sure.
We just got in a bunch of Scott scale bikes that everyone needs to check out if they want like a lightweight down country bike or a hardtail, like 30% off Sparks and Scales.
Oh my gosh.
And, like $5,000 bike for like $2,500 or something.
That's crazy.
And then we at the Path currently have, if it's a Santa Cruz and it's not a V10, a Skitch, or a Stigmata, it's on sale at the Path. Price is too good to advertise. Message us or call. Oof. And they're good. The deals are good. Like they're selling.
Wow.
And Santa Cruz is selling out of stuff fast too.
Oh,
because we're buying it.
yeah.
So we got a good promo going. Check it out. The best deals right now are on High Towers and Bronson's, but everything's got a deal. A lot of,
yeah. And that sounds fantastic.
and I kind of wanted to also, you made a note about how they changed the hardline course.
Oh yeah. Let's chat about that.
This is one of those topics. It's kind of a pet topic for me. And it's to me, it comes down to a couple of questions. And one is this a stuntman or is this a bike rider? And I think part of it is what's first, the bike passion, the handling skills and all that, or just the bravery and the planning.
Right.
And I also think it's how often are people getting injured is part of it.
Yeah.
So like in the Josh Bender days of freeride, I was uncomfortable with that because it seemed like it was more towards the
Stuntman,
and like just injuries are part of the game, and it's not about making it smooth. It's about just doing it. Right.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Where I think Red Bull Rampage in general does a really good job of towing the line.
Right.
In other words, the moves are huge and death-defying and terrifying, and crashes can be life-changing. But for the most part, the riders are building their own lines.
Yeah.
And there's a sense that these riders would maybe ride that if the cameras were off.
Yeah.
For their own fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also that they're riding sort of within their normal limits, sort of. Like they're pushing their limits, but they don't look out of control. They don't look ragged. They look like practiced.
Right.
They look like professionals and not like professional stuntmen, but like professional bike riders.
Yeah, exactly.
And so there's more of a sense of skill and less of a sense of spectacle.
Right.
And I guess that's part of the balance too. And I feel like maybe this is a good example of the hardline crew being like, hey, I think maybe we've crossed over, right? Let's
into
get this
spectacle.
back, right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been watching some of the point of view runs down, or even the non-point of view runs down. And it is the trail has the current trail to me feels like it has a fantastic mix of like some really cool big jumps that look like that fits in the norm,
Right.
and some really gnarly technical sections that I was like, well, I love the fact that they're working all of this into one run.
Yeah.
That river gorge jump, things look smaller on video.
Yeah.
That looks huge on video.
Yeah. And what if you get a flat coming into that? You're dead. Right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you blow out a tire and,
Right.
and go off that jump out of control, you're going to die.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
and as a childhood hero of mine was Evel Knievel.
Yeah.
My hippie mother didn't like the evil part, so she wanted me to be Goody Knitty. But Evel Knievel, right? Like it's a spectacle. It's a stuntman.
Sorry.
I got you with Goody Knitty, didn't I?
Okay. The spectacle of Evel Knievel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not that I don't. I like that stuff.
Sorry.
It's just not what I'm into for mountain biking. I like monster trucks. I like
Yes.
stunt people.
Yes.
I like
Yes.
all the weirdness. I like pro wrestling.
Yeah.
But
not
I also like
Yeah.
high level like grappling that's real.
right. Exactly. Exactly. And let Evel Knievel be Evel Knievel,
Yeah.
and let's have mountain biking. There's a space for this.
Right. And I guess to me, my point is there's room for both, and it's good to try to not confuse them.
Yeah, I agree.
And as far as the industry of mountain biking and the sport of mountain biking goes, I think that it's best to embrace not so much the stuntman part.
Right. Yeah, I agree. That's great.
All right. Maybe that's a podcast.
I think it is.
All right. Thanks, Ock. Thanks, Jake. Thanks to all the listeners. Huge thanks to the coworkers here at The Path and all the riders who come support The Path. And let's remember to love the bikes we ride.